Welcome back everyone. Hi, if you're new, I'm Tori, and today we're going to get into some summer book recommendations. I hate this season. I really do. I was actually going back through my channel to see if I'd ever done a summer book recommendations video before, and it doesn't look like I have. And I think that's because I try not to give this season too much attention, because if I do, I feel like it'll just linger and we'll just be hot all the time. I have a wide variety of recommendations here of books that I love and really have enjoyed. I think they fit different elements that well, not me, but other people tend to enjoy about summertime. I've got everything here from desert settings to bingeable reads, and the big action blockbuster movies are very popular in June or July, and so I have books here that I think will also kind of fit that if that's what you're looking for. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let's get into it. So first, let's kick things off with The Silverblood Promise by James Logan. This is the first book in a new fantasy series from Tor. This first book actually just came out in May, and I do have this book in a recent reads video. So if you want to hear like positive and negative thoughts about this book, you can definitely go check that out. But just in terms of a good summer book recommendation, I think this one fits the bill really perfectly. In this, we have our main character, Lucan. He comes from this noble family, and he was attending this academy, but something tragic happened and he was expelled. And he also has a really strained relationship with his father. At the beginning of this book, we find out that Lucan's father has been murdered, and the woman who works for their family gives Lucan this really cryptic note, only 3 words on it, and after that he sets off to the city of Safrona in order to find out, what this note really means, and also find out hopefully what happened to his father in the process. I mentioned this in my recent reads video, but I think if you enjoy something like The Lies of Locke Lamora, they're not similar at all in terms of story, but just in terms of the way Camor is basically its own character in that book and is just really distinct, and also the dynamic duo that we get in that book and the banter. I think if you enjoy all of that, you'll find a lot to love in The Silverblood Promise. I really love the city of Safrona in this as a character. It is just so gritty and grimy, and the distinct characters that Lucan meets along the way really makes this setting feel just extremely immersive and well realized. So I love that aspect of this book. And my other favorite aspect of it is the companion that Lucan has over the course of this story. I'm not going to spoil who it is because I think that is just part of the surprise and the excitement around this book. They are a mess together, and I don't love humor in a lot of my sci-fi and fantasy books, but I really enjoyed their banter just back and forth over the course of this book. The companion character is very they're a thief, they're very street savvy, and Lucan, he's this like well-educated noble, and the two of them together, the insults that they trade back and forth is definitely a shining light in some of the more darker moments in the story. I had a good time with this overall, so much that I will be continuing on with the series when book 2 is released. So if you're looking for something fun and adventurous and a little bit dark, but nothing too dark, because I feel like the tone of this definitely alleviates some of the darkness over the course of the story. If you're looking for all of that and want to get into a new fantasy series this summer, definitely look into The Silverblood Promise. I had a good time with this. Next, this is a predictable recommendation, but I gotta talk about it. That is The Adventures of Amina al-Sirafi by Shannon Chakraborty. I love this book, and I feel like I grow like more in love with this book the more that time passes. This is one of my favorite reads of 2023, but unfortunately this year I haven't had much of a chance to really insert it into any videos, but it's finally making its comeback because this is so good. I just had an all-around amazing time with Amina al-Sirafi. I think this is such a great example of just a really strong ensemble cast. This has that getting the band back together kind of vibe to it. But I love it because when the characters are together, you feel like that they have history. You feel like that they actually know each other, care about each other, will do anything for each other. And the way that they bicker and insult each other over the course of this book, I think it's just really entertaining. But even beyond that, I think Shannon Chakraborty, I've mentioned this before, I think she is a really great storyteller. She does such a great job with setting and character and just making her settings feel extremely vivid and immersive. And I think that really shines in something like The Adventures of Amina al-Sirafi. This is historical fantasy, and it is just so good. You feel it. So in this, we have our main character, Amina al-Sirafi. She's a retired captain, but someone at the beginning of the novel approaches her and forces her back into one final job. So Amina, she has to pack up, leave her daughter behind, and go out and round up her old crew for one final job. It's just good fun out on the water. Amina's also telling her story to somebody, so that adds another great layer of storytelling to this, which I really appreciated. And I also just love what it says about, you know, working moms and getting back out there and, you know, still being able to have your same loves and do what you did in the past, even though you have a child now. I love everything about this. I really do. I could talk about Amina all day. And I'm so excited for the sequel. I was hopeful that it would come out sometime in 2024, but we still haven't gotten it yet, so my fingers are crossed for 2025. But yeah, if you're looking for a great summer read, this is, I really don't think you can get any better than this. Now let's get into a book that I have actually recommended in a fall recommendations video for different reasons. I think this also fits in fall, which I'll talk about, but now we're gonna put it in a summer video, and that is 12 Kings and Sharakhai, and this is the first book in the Song of the Shattered Sand series. I love this book. I love this book so much. Yes, I still need to continue the series, but I really love this first book. It just blew me away. This is a desert fantasy series, and this first book is just so good. I love the level of detail that we get in this book about Sharakhai and just the nature of how things work in the city. It is so good, and I really ate it up. So that's one reason that I think it could work for fall, is because the setting is so detailed and immersive, and I think this is the kind of sweeping fantasy story that you can just lose yourself in the fall. But because it is a desert setting and it is so hot in this book, I also think that it could work for summer and you could lose yourself in it in this season as well. So in this we have the city of Sharakhai. They're kind of like the beacon for trade and goods and all of this in the center of all these other surrounding desert cities. And also Sharakhai is ruled by these 12 kings, and they're protected by what's known as blade maidens. And so our main character Shada, she lives in Sharakhai, and Shada, she's had to do a lot of scrappy things to get by. She's a pit fighter, and the city has, I believe, like a holy night or some kind of special night where everyone's supposed to be inside, but Shada ends up outside doing a job with her friend, and while she's out she does discover some things about her mother, and that just leads her down a path of secret and mysteries and trying to unravel things about her past and Sharakhai and the kings and the politics and everything of this city. It is so good. I really love this, and because it is a desert setting and because the author is so detailed, you really feel like every moment. Shada will be walking through like the markets and stalls and things, and you just it just feels so hot and sticky, but at the same time you smell like spices. Oh, it's so good, you guys. So I think if you want to fall into something like that this summer, a setting that is just so rich and vivid and extremely hot and immersive, I think you would really enjoy something like 12 Kings and Sharakhai. The author is very long-winded and I think in a lot of places very overly descriptive, but for me it definitely worked because I love the setting of this so much. So if you pick this up, I also hope it works for you, and I will definitely be continuing this series very soon. Still kind of bummed that I haven't done it already because this first book was incredible, and I still think this is kind of like an underrated fantasy series, but I personally just highly recommend this first book. If it works for you, it's really gonna hit. And then, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, summer is that time when we begin to get all of these like big action movies and just all of that happening. So I think if you love something like that and you're just looking for like a big story, a big epic fantasy, you definitely need to read The Rage of Dragons and The Fires of Vengeance by Evan Winter if you haven't done so already. This is book 1 and 2 in the Burning series. I thought we were gonna get book 3 this year, Lord of Demons, or I think it's Lord of Demons. I thought we were gonna get it this year, but still no word on it, but I have my fingers crossed that hopefully it comes out in 2025. I actually really enjoyed Fires of Vengeance. I thought this was such a strong sequel. I liked The Rage of Dragons overall. Tao, I've said this so many times when I've talked about these books, Tao is my least favorite part of this series. He is just like a background character to me in his own story, but in Fires of Vengeance especially, the side characters begin to really shine. But this is an African-inspired epic military fantasy series, and in this we have our main character Tao, and at the beginning of this book, The Rage of Dragons, something just extremely horrific happens and it sets Tao on a course of revenge, and from there he begins training, he enters these fights, and he's doing all of this to bulk up and get back at the people who wronged him. But at the same time, this is a world that has been at war for as long as anybody can remember. So that's also going on in the background over the course of this book. And this one is definitely more like kind of a gladiator fighting style feel to it throughout this first book. And then we got the sequel, The Fires of Vengeance. And this was definitely more up my alley. It still has that military fantasy element to it, but more in the second book, it's kind of the other side of military fantasy, the plotting and the planning and the heavy politics and all of that, which is a side that I appreciate and enjoy reading a little bit more than just flat out, you know, military fighting. This one is just a lot of Tao being Tao, doing kind of ridiculous things, making bad decisions. But in this one, the side characters really begin to step up, and I start gravitating to them a lot more than Tao. And on top of the fact that it is a lot more political, I just had such a better reading experience with book 2. But just as a series overall, I'm excited to see where it goes, and I cannot wait to read book 3 because of the way that this book ended. So I definitely have my eye out for that. But if you're looking for something that's big and has a lot of action and fighting and just really an explosive epic fantasy story this summer, and you still have not read these books, definitely put them on your TBR. Next, I have a book I haven't talked about in a while. In summer, I feel like people like to pick up thrillers and mysteries and have something bingeable and twisted and something that'll just like blow their minds. I gotta come back and recommend Recursion by Blake Crouch. This is so good. This was one of my favorite reads in the year that I read it. I'm still thinking about this book a couple of years later. I've talked about Blake Crouch a lot over the years. I think he is such a great sci-fi thriller author. And so far, I've really loved everything that I've read from him. Recursion is definitely my favorite of, you know, Blake Crouch's like big 3 novels, this, Dark Matter, and Upgrade. I cannot get enough of this story. It is so incredible. We have this phenomenon in the book called false memory syndrome. And because of it, people will basically remember things that never happened to them. They remember like different lifetimes and kids they never had and just, you know, all type of stuff going on. And you learn over the course of the book that this false memory syndrome is basically a consequence of this technology that was started by this scientist, Helena. And she did it out of pure intentions because she had a parent who was suffering from Alzheimer's disease. She was manipulated and it was used for bad intentions. And now we have this false memory syndrome. So we have Helena's story, but we also have a cop in this, Barry, that we're following. He has his own grief that he's been struggling with for years at this point as well. And we're following these two characters in different timelines. One is a little bit more in the past, one is in present day. And because false memory syndrome just begins to get so out of control, over the course of this book, their paths begin to cross in just some of the most mind-blowing ways. It is incredible. This is the kind of book where when you're reading it, midway through, you just have to stop and like ask yourself, what could Blake Crouch's outline have possibly looked like while writing this book? Because it is absolutely unhinged. I love this book so much. It is the definition of mind-blowing and twisted. And as you keep reading, reality and time just begin to do some weird and just messed up things. I think this is a perfect summer read. Definitely pick this up if you haven't read it already. And then next up, I have another really exciting read. It's a new release that just came out last week. That is The Stardust Grail by Yume Katase. This is the author's second novel. I had such a good time with this book. I think Yume Katase is a great new voice in science fiction. I can't wait to see what she does next. We have our main character in this, Maya. She is a retired art thief and she's just trying to lay low now on Earth and just kind of move on with her life, but she gets pulled back into a final job. I feel like that's a common theme with this video. She gets pulled back into a final job where the stakes are just extremely high. She's told to go find this ancient relic, and the relic actually belongs to this alien species and they, you know, need it for their survival. But at the same time, other people want Maya to find it because if she doesn't, it could really, I'm trying not to spoil anything, it could really have detrimental effects to Earth and humanity and just our place in the galaxy, in the universe as a whole. So I thought this was such a fun and adventurous time. And I mentioned in my recent video that this is great if you love something like Indiana Jones and Tomb Raider. Not that it's similar to those things, but just the vibes of them. And if you like that whole sense of adventure and just all of that and ancient relics, I think you could get a lot out of this. What I also enjoyed about this is that Yume Katase also brings a great sense of identity to her characters. And that's also a theme that they tend to grapple with over the course of her books, at least from what I've read in her first book, The Deep Sky, and now this. So I do enjoy the way that the author explores those themes in her work. And again, this is just such a good read that I think is perfect for summer. So if it sounds great to you, definitely give this one a try. And like I also mentioned in my last video, I did really enjoy the author's first novel, The Deep Sky. I thought the character work in The Deep Sky was a little bit better than it was in here. But that being said, I enjoyed the story of this one and just the different settings and the crew in this a little bit more than I did in The Deep Sky. And then let's get into a book that I just refuse to shut up about. You guys are gonna get sick of me talking about this book, but it is These Burning Stars by Bethany Jacobs. I keep telling you guys, this book is so good. It is so good, and it is just, it's summer ready. It has everything. It has action scenes, it has the fighting, but also to balance it out, it has some really excellent world building and political intrigue over the course of this book, and characters that just leap off the page in a way that is so unforgettable. I think honestly, the more I talk about this book, one of the main characters in this is Sek Nightfoot. She is becoming one of my favorite characters of all time. This is described as a cat and mouse game across the galaxy, and we have a few different main characters over the course of this book. The governing body of this world is the kingdom, and they have a really unique structure. They have you know, really powerful families within the kingdom, and their reach is pretty expansive. One of our main characters that we're following is this young thief and hacker named June, and she acquires something that is really detrimental to one of the powerful families in the kingdom, and if it would ever get out, all hell would break loose. And so the kingdom, they take quick action, and they actually send out one of the members of the powerful family, our other main character is Sek Nightfoot. They send her out and another character to go find this girl and go get that information back, no matter the cost. So that is like one storyline that we're following, but there's also another character in this book, Six. I cannot get enough of them. Six is so good. The way that their character is written, I think, is just extremely, it keeps you really engaged. It's so fascinating. And Sek, she has this obsession with Six that is just carried over the course of all of these years, and it is an obsession that drives so much of the things that are happening in this book, and the way that she tries to like hunt Six down in these different ways, it's so good. And Sek Nightfoot is such an amazing character. I feel like we get into this space where, you know, we talk about characters that are morally gray and we debate their actions and all this kind of stuff. Sek is not morally gray. She's just straight up she's arrogant, she's extremely narcissistic, she's selfish, she's just this horrible, intimidating figure. And because of the way that she's written, when she's in scenes with certain characters, sometimes you are holding your breath to see what she's about to do, because she's unpredictable, but at the same time, when she does something, she's not. Like, you're like, oh, that's very Sek. Oh, she just shot that guy. Like, oh, very Sek. So I think there's so many moments in this book that will just get your adrenaline going, have you holding your breath in certain moments. I highly recommend this book. And the second one is coming out on October 15th. It's on Vicious World. Still no cover for it, but I will be at the bookstore, somebody's bookstore, literally waiting for the doors to open when the second book comes out. And then last but not least, if you're not really into thrillers in the summertime, but you know, lean a little bit more mystery, I have a great recommendation for you, and that is The Mimicking of Known Successes by Malka Older. This is a sci-fi novella, sci-fi mystery novella, and I really enjoyed this. This takes place on Jupiter, and we have two main characters in this, Massa and Pleiade. Massa is an investigator, and Pleiade, she's a student at the university, and Massa goes to investigate after someone disappears, and the early pieces of that investigation very quickly lead her back to her ex-girlfriend, Pleiade. I love their dynamic. The two of them balance each other so incredibly well. I had such a good time with this book, and I still really want to read the sequel to this. It's like The Imposition of, I'll put it on the screen, I forgot the name of it, but I do want to read the sequel. I think the mystery of this flows really well, but there's also a really nice historical aspect to this book as well, and we see a lot more of that because of Pleiade's background. So I liked all of those elements of the story. I think the two of them work very well together, and I cannot wait to read more. So yeah, if you're looking for a good but short mystery novel this summer, definitely don't miss out on The Mimicking of Known Successes. So that is it for me, you guys. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I really appreciate it. Let me know down in the comments if you've read any of these, or just your thoughts in general. If you're going to pick any of these up, I would love to hear about it, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.